really early on, as I was just starting my sex therapy training, I let my work know that like I was doing this, and they started giving me all sorts of clients with erotic minorities. And I had a client who sat down on my sofa in my office and told me that she was non-monogamous, and I was the first therapist that she was disclosing non-monogamy to in over a decade.
Wow.
Because the last time she disclosed to a clinician that she was non-monogamous, the therapist slapped their thigh and said, "Oh, well, that makes sense that why you're having so many relationship issues, you can't commit."
Mm.
And listening to this client disclose that experience absolutely gutted me, because it was such a clear example of how, if we're not careful to work on our own biases, how they can show up and how we conceptualize our clients. That clinician in that moment really thought that they had a good insight to explain why their client was struggling with something,
Yeah.
because they had a predisposition to believing something about non-monogamy, when in reality this client's non-monogamy was polyamory, and this
Mm.
client did not have an issue with committing. This
Mm.
client was actually very good at committing to more than one person at a time.
Yeah.
And I could not imagine, as a clinician, not knowing such a big part about my client's life, right? Not knowing that my
Right.
client had more than one relationship. And here she was on my couch, being able to, for the first time in a decade, be open about this part of her life and get affirming therapy for this part of her life. And while non monogamy was a little bit of why she was there, she was primarily there working on trauma and safety and stabilization. And every now and then, non monogamy would come into the mix because she was working on creating safety in her relationships. But she didn't have to worry about being judged by me. And
Mm.
I got to work with that client through the end. And she's come back a couple times for some maintenance work. But it was one of the coolest moments as a baby sex therapist to be able to have somebody disclose that to me, to be able to see that client through all the way, and then to be able to share that story with later interns and supervisees and with my students about the importance of our own bias work. Because if we're not careful, it shows up and affects our clients, and it can literally affect their therapy trajectory if we're not careful.